Hello everyone. This video will focus on the topic of diatonic modulation, and we'll talk through an analysis of a Bach chorale. So this is the handout that is available on Canvas. The title of the handout is Diatonic Modulation. It talks about first what a modulation is, and should be a review from all of the Edpuzzle videos and the textbook reading that you've been doing so far. Modulation is a change in tonal center, and modulations that we've been talking about occur when things move to a closely related key. And a closely related key is one that differs from the original key by one accidental, and it includes both major and minor keys, and you have an example on this handout. A way to accomplish a modulation, one that we've been talking about discussing recently, is to use a common chord or a pivot chord. The pivot chord is one that functions diatonically in both the original and the new key. So the pivot chord naturally occurs in both keys. So we'll now analyze this Bach chorale. I'll play you a recording first of the excerpt that you have, and then we'll talk through it. And that's where your excerpt ends. You may have seen in the video that I added a few little phrase markings at the points where I heard cadences. So let's see where we are with keys. The opening, I see an A minor triad on beat 1, and no sharps, no flats. It sounded like tonic to me in the opening, so I'm going to say that's a 1 chord. I also heard at the end of measure 2 that it sounded like an authentic cadence, and we have an A minor chord at that point as well. If I back up from the cadence point in measure 2 and look at the chord before it, I see I have E's, I have a B in the soprano, and then I have my choice of A or G in the tenor. I see that the A is suspended over, and the G sharp, that's a G sharp based on the accidental from the beginning of the measure. The G sharp then comes in on the and of 3, making this a 5 chord with a 4-3 suspension. And that root position 5 going to root position 1 with tonic in the soprano makes this a PAC. At the end of measure 4, I have another cadence point. I didn't get the sense that we changed keys, but I don't see an A minor chord there under the fermata. You see an E major chord, and within A minor, E major makes sense as 5, and this is a half cadence at that point. Looking ahead then, at the end of measure 6 at the next fermata, I have a C in the soprano, an E in the alto, a G in the tenor, and a C in the bass. This is no longer an A minor chord, but C major at this point. A C major chord. It's not A minor, it's not tonic anymore, so I need to ask myself the question of whether I'm tonicizing C at this point, whether I'm modulating to C, or whether something else is going on. So if I look at the chord before it, on beat 3 of measure 6, I see 2 G's in the bass. I see a G up in the alto that has a little passing motion leading to the final chord in the measure. I see a D in the soprano, and I see a C to a B. The C looks like it's suspended and then resolves down to the B in the tenor voice. So it's very similar to measure 2 with the 4-3 motion suspension that happens in the tenor. Looking at this chord, I see a G major chord if I ignore those embellishing tones. So I have G, I have B, and I have D. G major, C major, G major going to C major. G major is the 5 of C, so we can probably assume that we have modulated to C major here. Then for PAC in C major, which is the mediant related to A minor. So it's a PAC in 3 related to A minor. All that 3 means is that 3 is C major within the key of A minor. Okay, so we have identified our new key area. We know where we're coming from. So let's focus on measures 5 and 6, since that's where our modulation is going to take place. Measure 5 still begins in A minor because we have an A minor chord on that downbeat. The next beat, I have a G in the bass. That G goes to F. I have a D and I have an A. I need to figure out what fits and what doesn't here. D, F, A, I can arrange in a triad, but that G seems to be out of place. And if that's the case, then I know I have a passing tone in that bass line. D, F, A within the key of A minor is my 4 chord. D is 4 in the key of A, and the F in the bass makes this a first inversion chord. Moving to beat 3, I have E, G, E in the bass, G in the soprano and the alto. And then I have a D and a C in my tenor line. Looking at what's going on here rhythmically, I see that that D is suspended over beat 3 and then resolves downward to the C. So that D is not going to be part of that analysis for the Roman numeral, but this is a suspension, and it is a 7/6 suspension based on the intervals above the bass. E to D is a 7th, and E to C is a 6th. So I'm left with C, E, G as my chord, or E, G, C, if you prefer to just look at what I've written above the staff here. C, E, G is 3 in A minor, and it is in first inversion because the E is in the bass. I can continue in A minor, keep going, F, A, C on the next beat, on beat 4, and then I see E and G after it, sort of the E in the bass acting like a passing tone, the G acting as a neighbor tone in the alto voice. F, A, C within the key of A minor is 6. But I know I'm eventually going to go to C major. C major and A minor are relative keys. At this point, in A minor, I've had tonic, I've had a predominant chord, and then I'm moving to these chords that really aren't dominant. They aren't tonic. They sort of are tonic expansion chords, but they're sort of looking a little funky. So I'm going to continue one more beat and see what I have. I have a D in the bass on beat 1 in measure 6. I have a C and a B. I have an A, another D, and then an F. In this, again, I look in the tenor voice, I see that C that's suspended over, matching what happened in measure 5. This is again another suspension, and is another 7/6 suspension. So I'm going to ignore that C in my analysis. I can include the A, because this is then B, D, F, A. In A minor, B is 2. B, D, F, A is a half diminished 7th chord, and this would happen on scale degree 2 in A minor. and it is in first inversion. So this is a 2 half diminished 6/5. And this is looking really funky to me, given what we know about chord progressions. Do sixes usually go to 2 half diminished chords? And the answer to that, in my mind, is like, this looks a little funny to me. And I know that I'm modulating, so I need to find where that modulation happens. So I'm going to use the trick of moving backwards. I know I'm ending in C major. I know I end with a tonic chord, and then I have a dominant before it. I'm actually going to move and write these chords in a different color so we can see this modulation. So there's my 1 chord, there's my 5. Oops. Try that again, sorry. 5, 4, 3 to the 1. And I'm going to look now on the chord on beat 2. I have an E, a C, an E, and a G. And then that F in the bass is a passing tone. So C, E, G here. C, E, G in my new key is tonic. It's a 1, 1, 6, because that E is in the bass line. And if I back up to that B half diminished chord, that 2 half diminished 6/5 in A minor, can I reinterpret that in the key of C major? And does it make a little bit more sense in that context? The answer is yes. B is the leading tone of C major. So this is a leading tone chord, half diminished, and it is in first inversion. That chord is functioning in C major as its leading tone. It's no longer functional as the 2 chord in A minor because that 2 is not proceeding onto a 5 chord. So I need to back up 1 more chord and see if I can find a pivot. So I know that at this point, that C7 half diminished 6/5, that B, D, F, A chord, this is the leading tone chord. It's no longer functioning in A minor. So that's the moment where I've already shifted. Back up 1 chord and we can find a pivot. So the chord on beat 4 in measure 5 is that F major chord. Well, F major is 4 in C major. And that could be our pivot. We could back up more to that 3/6, which is then the 1/6 in C major. But it's always nice to pivot on a chord that can function as a predominant in the new key area. So my 4 is my new predominant. That 7 starts a dominant area, and then we end with that tonic. So let's listen to this again so we kind of hear how this pivot chord is working. I might talk through a little bit of it as well as the recording plays. There's that PAC in A minor. Half cadence. That half cadence sounds very incomplete. Question mark. We continue in A minor. At this point I'm shifting. There's my PAC in C major.